Okay, so this one will be called Tanya DeHart phone call summary, which it would have been better if it were fresh, right? So this was my December 3rd phone call with Tanya DeHart. It was delayed 6 hours. It was incredibly difficult getting this phone call to happen. And then when we did, it was beautiful. It was 33 minutes. She said Northwest Senior and Disability Services would never try to breach the medical privacy of a client. And this is under the larger topic of why would someone claiming to be a Northwest Senior and Disability Services program partner be hiring a lawyer to breach the privacy of a client of Northwest Senior and Disability Services, medical privacy, personal privacy papers, especially to justify a crime that occurred, that person used the Northwest Senior and Disability Services logo to gain the trust of the person who he would then assault. So we talked a lot about other cases. Like there's an elderly woman who had this done to her by the man who sexually attacked me. She never went back to Meals on Wheels. And other program recipients witnessed the harassment, said that's inappropriate, leave her alone, go away from her. She went home and told her daughter, I'm never going there again. And there were, let's see, there's been emerging details that came in, and she basically, Tanya DeHart, the executive director, was looking at my big case file. She was looking at the legal correspondence from his harassing lawyer, Chris Palmer, who tried to violate my medical privacy to intimidate me out of getting my stalking order. Even just the failure to respond to the stalking order appropriately, which would have been show up to your hearing, it to me is suspicious. It's like, why don't you want to just show up and do what is right according to the law, follow Violence Against Women Act provisions? Why are you trying to stretch the limits and bend the limits of the law to weasel out of this or delay the statute of limitations? And well, it was a really nice phone call. And then I guess to follow up, I kept getting more and more information because all these people are like opening up and talking to me about this stuff. So then I run into this guy and I have more information. So I'm typing up these emails and then not sure how they're all collated within their system. And I get a bounce back from Kevin Grosniklaus saying, contact this person because he's out of town for the weekend. So I call and it turns out, I find out the second phone call around, she's his supervisor. And she's like, no, I am a higher level of manager than Kevin Grosniklaus. And you can give my number to anybody who feels that they've been discriminated against, harassed, treated improperly, fired wrongfully, sexually attacked, or, physically assaulted, whatever. So she wants it all. And her name is Shacey May at Salem Northwest Senior Office. She wants to know about this Meals on Wheels Me Too fiasco, where the Park District has this partnership. And basically, I've tried to pursue every possible alternative understand. And like with Shacey, she's a woman and she's getting it from a human level of like how horrifying. And the assault on me should be enough, but there just happens to be a snowballing of victims and bad things that have happened additionally, which is what I expected. That is the nightmare, and that's what I'm trying to prevent. And so we had a talk on the 13th of December, which just happened to be Friday the 13th, and she was positively panicked. And I think she was like, okay, basically I stayed up all night and forwarded every single email I had, which basically is my paper trail. And part of it was I had a lunch date planned with a fired volunteer who had stuck up for a woman being assaulted by the director and had been fired by the director. So a whistleblower volunteer who had been fired, who is a senior, who is disabled, who doesn't like violence to women, was going to go in. And it basically gave me so much anxiety having to face off with the guy who sexually attacked me, having the backup and support of a different victim who's also an advocate. He's an advocate and victim, because if you're an advocate, you will be retaliated against, because this is the retaliation culture. And last minute, he's just like, you know what, no, kind of like not feeling it. And I was kind of like, yeah, I actually feel really sick about going there, because they're risky people and they're playing some kind of like hopscotch with the truth. I don't know, they've got their little strategy to try to demonize their victims. Kick it. One of the things he told me that was really interesting is that when he was being fired for sticking up for women, the guy who attacked me said, "We're on thin ice." So the program doesn't have to be on thin ice. Part of even, this is something I keep thinking I want to write a blog about, part of why I even talked to him for more than 5 seconds was I felt sorry for the Trump agenda against Meals on Wheels. I was like, oh, I don't really know much about Meals on Wheels, whatever, it's just probably food, you know, who cares? But it's like, oh, that's so sad. Everybody's so upset about Meals on Wheels in the brand new Trump presidency. And what's kind of the irony here is that I felt sorry for the destruction of that program, but here he's enacting a destruction of his own local program by tarnishing its name, bringing dishonor and discredit, going out and attacking people, being discriminatory, harassing, elder abuse, assaulting elders, assaulting disabled people, being discriminatory against volunteers, enabling his predatory superiors to creating a whole culture of bullying of women, bullying of minorities and elderly, and discrimination. It's like they're defacing the whole notion. So it's like Trump doesn't have to destroy Meals on Wheels. The people who are running Meals on Wheels can destroy it themselves without Trump's help. So much for my sympathy there. And wherever there are good things happening, bad people will get into those kinds of programs for grooming purposes. And that's the sad reality. That's something I've become more aware of. I didn't want to believe that about this particular individual. I thought he looked like a friend. He reminds me of my brother, he talks like my grandma, like Irish American. I didn't feel like I should intrinsically harbor some prejudice against him. But, I mean, at the very least, maybe we've stopped some of the abuse. Maybe if he is physically assaulting his girlfriend or whatever women he's involved with, maybe he stopped that. It's even funny with, like, notions of domestic violence. It's like, yeah, domestic violence is pretty stigmatized. It's not cool. It's not really cool in Astoria. But, like, why do it on other people's girlfriends? Like, it's weird enough to be, like, the violent, aggressive guy on your woman, but just to, like, go attack some random woman who is, like, your potential volunteer, it makes no sense at all. And it makes even less sense that it's been allowed to fester. And I think a lot of it is just seeing Ron Brown, like, melting over this case, and seeing Hansen, like, the detective Hansen was like, well, you're just are after his job, or like, I want him to lose his job. But it's like, it has nothing to do with him losing his job. It has to do with endangering elderly and endangering the program and discouraging participation by all members of society. And then Hansen was like, well, he's never been more miserable. And misery is not the quantification of justice. Like, his misery is his own making. I didn't cause him to attack me. I don't know why he attacked me. Maybe I'll never know. I did find this, like, weird thing about Grosse Pointe, Michigan being, like, super racist and using Confederate flags at their high school. And I mean, I immediately after he attacked me assumed he was a victim of violence, that maybe his father beat him mercilessly, or he was bullied by the kids in the back of the schoolyard, and he was reenacting some primal abuse. I also assumed he probably was physically violent with his sister, who he said thought he was a jerk. And my speculation doesn't really matter. Violence is a wave and a chain, and I think intercepting his violence with my non-violent reaction, hopefully it is the peace action or the satyagraha that is demanded by the situation. But the disparate impact of people embedded within the social safety net enacting violence on constituents, it's extremely sinister, and it's sinister to see it protected. And it's sinister to see complacent people kind of creating their own imaginary happy land where they don't think it's really that significant. And it's kind of been educational to watch all of that unfold. I was really glad to speak to Tanya DeHart. It was good. It was really good. I think she's 46 or something like that. I think Shacey May's 44. I looked up their bio and stuff to see who they are. Who am I speaking to? They're women in my generation. They probably know exactly what kind of guy this is. I don't know.